everybody. Eve Harow, Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. It is August 31st, 2021, the 23rd, I think the 23rd day of Elul, 5781. Just got off a plane back to Israel a few hours ago, so I'm sipping on what's going to be many cups of coffee today, but didn't want to disappoint, of course, all my listeners. And so we are putting out a podcast today, of course, with thanks as always to Ben and to Tabitha. Had a really interesting trip to the States. We'll talk about it another time. I know those of you who heard last week's podcast heard the presentation that I gave in Aspen, Colorado, which was very interesting in a lot of ways. But today we are doing a very different segue. I have with me, and for those of you who want to watch this, this is also going to be, this video is being videoed and an audio podcast. I have with me someone I've interviewed before, someone I work with closely with One Israel Fund, Marc Provisor, on a completely different topic than we usually do, which is, of course, Israel and security and Yehuda v'Shomron. He had definitely a more interesting couple of weeks than I did, in Poland, no less. So I asked him and got in the middle of somewhat of a controversy. Controversy just seems to follow certain people. But anyway, I asked him to share with us some of his experiences there. And so he is. So Marc Provisor, thanks for joining us today with the hat on of not security, with a hat on of artist. And I would even say, at this point, internationally known artist. So what have you been up to?
So, yeah, I was actually in the States at first, and then I flew to Poland. I was invited to be part of a major exhibition in the Ujazdowski Museum of Contemporary Art. It's a major museum in Poland, and the topic of the show, it was called Political Art, even though the works of mine, I don't think they were political, but it had to do with, you know, in today's world, what we hear of what they call cancel culture, what's politically correct, woke, and all these other things. So there's a major problem going on, especially in the arts world, that if you don't line up with these people's train of thought, if what I think is already becoming mainstream, then you're really not necessarily accepted. Meaning that if your own opinions differ from others, then you're bad.
You're saying the art world is no different than the regular world, where...
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
So this show was also based on a freedom of expression. I'm part of also a group called Passion for Freedom, was freedom in the arts to express things, whatever that some do deem controversial today, because if it doesn't, again, work with the cancel culture, if it doesn't go with Antifa, with a lot of these things, then you can actually be blacklisted. And there's a number of paintings that I make based on my experience with terrorism that I really never tried to show, but the museum director got in touch with me. He had heard about me, and they asked that I put my works in the show, which is, first of all, very exciting for me because my first exhibition in a museum, and it's running for months. It's not just a pop-up show, and it may tour the world. The controversy all started because, and I think the museum in a sense made a mistake. Two of the artists that also came in, one is a definite anti-Semite and questions the Holocaust, and the other one is, I think, just a whatever. I don't think he has any. Not a big fan of the Jews either, but the whole thing was very interesting. It was 27 artists from around the world. There were Muslims, there were Christians, there were Buddhists, a couple of Jews, but the lands that they came from: Yemen, Iran, Denmark, Sweden, England, Poland, obviously, a couple of other places. And they were basically, a lot of it was deemed political because they were talking against bad things that happened to them. The Muslim women involved were talking about what goes on, meaning the forced marriages, the mutilation, the way Sharia law affects women, like a classic, what's going on in Afghanistan now. Some of the other European artists were going against various regimes that were considered fascist, and what's going on I mean, it was an incredible show.
But let me ask you, they weren't afraid? Look, remember, we're speaking to a mainly Western audience now, people who could exhibit something. Someone may not like it, but they don't have to be afraid. I hope not, when they go back to their country.
First of all, a number of the artists have had death threats. There were a couple of artists that actually had bodyguards there and so on, because no, I'll get into that in a second, because remember, a lot of these topics aren't really addressed in the world, especially in the beautiful art world, right? I mean, if someone comes out against Sharia treatment of women, then, oh, you're an Islamophobe. If someone comes out against God knows what, if someone does not fall in line with the woke and stuff today, then you're anti. So individual thought is no longer important. And not only that, but again, if you don't fall in line, then that's it. You're subversive. You're bad. You know, God forbid you say something against what's going on in the States, whether it be the BLM movement. Not that you disagree, but if you're not following the herd, then you're bad. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these artists, because they don't follow the herd, it's not that they not have anti-statements, but because they're not 100% there, that's what happens. Now, there were some of the artists there that definitely were coming out against stuff, I did think in a right way. I mean, I was what? Disturbed.
Like what? Give us an example.
Well, first of all, there a few of the European artists were. This was a really educational trip for me. I have to say, first of all, this was the first time I was in Poland, in Warsaw, which was very emotional for me, because I have family that was also lost there. And I'd never
in the Holocaust. In the
Holocaust. They were actually, from what I understand from other family members, they were in the resistance also. And I didn't want to go. I honestly didn't want to go. But, you know, sometimes you have to. And I decided, all right, it is time to see. And so first of all, it was a real education for me. Besides being emotional, going there as a country, as if I have family who fought against Jew hatred back then, and then to make this roundabout trip, you know, I've been fighting against our enemies for so long. And then to show up there, I felt, you know what, I have to do it. I don't know how to say tikkun in English, but that's what, in a sense, what it was for me.
Well, some kind of closure, maybe?
Closure, not necessarily closure, but repair of something.
Right,
so,
right.
You know, the Jews of then, and now here comes another Jew who continues to fight against this. So the minute that the controversy came out, which was a little late, we saw one of the artists there's real. I know I'm not supposed to speak bad language here, but I mean, imagine, I mean, you know the way I speak. This guy was just nasty. I mean,
This is Dan Park. I read a couple of articles.
Yeah. So I really wanted to confront him, and I said, you know what? The artist received a lot of letters from Antifa, from the anti-fascist movement, and other things, that we should pool our works because of one moron. They're saying that this show. The rest of you shouldn't exhibit your work alongside his. Right, because of one moron. So, and rather than focus, first of all, on all these incredibly important issues, these people decide, let's focus on this one idiot. Mm-hmm. Oh, this one shouldn't be. Now, again, I not that he had his images I really didn't like, and when I saw his past and what he's done, this guy's despicable, and I really wanted to confront him there, and he was avoiding me like the plague. I mean, I went up, you know, even extended my hand, but like walk away. But the point that I'm making is that rather than focus on all this abuse of women's rights, of human rights, of all these other things, the press and everyone, oh, racism, whatever, this guy they're focusing on, rather than the other 26 artists who had good points. Now, again, there was some controversy with also the others. It was really politically charged. But that really
sounds like it was the whole point.
The whole point was
to get people out of their comfort zones and face some things that are difficult for them.
That's right. But also, but these issues are not difficult for them. When you talk about women's rights and human rights. This shouldn't be a difficult topic to discuss.
Right.
But
Right.
then rather these beautiful, these evolved humans, rather than speak about these issues that are so important, no, they chose to look and say, oh, anti-Semitism and whatever. Now, I'm against anti-Semitism in a big way, okay? I mean, I'll put my life on the line without thinking twice going against it. But these people simply they would not address all these other atrocities being against humans. No, let's pick a little Jewish thing. And even the Jewish community of Poland, they wrote a thing, and it pissed me off.
What did they write? Wait, what did they write?
Oh, they were so offended by this guy being in the show. And I understand that. And I agree with that. But don't write a letter. Come back. Confront him. What is this stuff standing in the back? Oh, you did a bad thing. Go and meet this head on. Now, I posted about something like this on Facebook. And what was very interesting, very positive reactions. Like, yes, because I wrote back to the Antifa, I said, I'm not pulling out of this show. And you've given me motivation yet to stay in it and given me strength that I'm going to stand up to any haters and hatred. And I had expected the Jewish community of Poland also to do the thing. Don't just write a show. Come on out, discuss it. But who am I to, I'm not judging them, but maybe it's a difference between living in Israel and living in the diaspora, and especially living in Poland. Yeah. Now, wait. Now, let me say something. A lot of the images that I found, this was major for me, educational also, because I did not understand the way the Europeans reacted to Nazism and Germany and the hatred that still exists there. So even
towards Nazism, towards Jews, towards whom?
Towards Germany. Towards Germany and things. I mean, there were images put on, like one image that really bothered me was, I mean, there were a few, but one, it had like the entrance gate of Auschwitz, and it said reparations, the reparaciones, machen frei. And I was like, whoa, what's going on here? How could you put something up like that? And then I started discussing this, and there are a lot of people in Europe that don't get reparations, and they're upset at this. Like, why are other people getting reparations and we're not? And it's not that I am justifying what went on between Europeans and Jews during World War II. I mean, anti-Semitism is rife in Europe, and it is rife in I hope I'm using the right word. You're supposed to correct me, but in Poland, it's there. Okay, anyone who says, "Oh no, it's not," it's there, and it's not just coming from the Poles. By the way, it also comes from a lot of from the Islamic countries who have descended on Europe and so on. So, I'm looking at these images, and I went right up to the artist. There was another artist who put up another thing, and I said, he put up a picture that I really did not like. It was a famous picture from the Warsaw Ghetto of the child holding up, and with the face of Elvis instead. And I said, what the hell is this?
What was it?
Well, he says, well, Elvis's song In the Ghetto. Now, I know this guy doesn't necessarily, he's not a big fan of Jews and so on, but we had it out in a sense, real discussion. And to the point that one of his posts that he made, which wasn't most Jew-friendly, if you will, he took it down. Really? He took it down, and he said to me, I did not understand this other side. So the whole thing is dialogue brings things together. And writing simply a letter of saying, oh, this is bad, that doesn't. It's the dialogue and the confrontation. This is what can bring about solutions and peaceful solutions. And a lot of people, I guess they may not realize it because of my security background. I do security because I want peace. I want quiet, and this is why I've been fighting terror for my good part of my life. Not because necessarily an agenda, though obviously I'm as Zionist as they come, I like to think, but because I don't want people to die. So the whole thing was really interesting, and it was educational for me regarding Poland. One, it's not that, again, I haven't become a big fan, and there's a lot of contention right now in Poland between Poland and Israel regarding the restitution and so on. But it was something, and it was offensive to me that to see people, rather than look at a bigger picture right in their face about human rights, about all these things, about women's rights, about freedom of speech, they decide to pick on something which is actually minuscule and an idiot. I don't care that they picked on him, but the subject, and ignore everything else. And we see this all across the Western world. You know, people are talking about this, even though they're saying, you know, in America, you know, when I was driving through some of the, I'll call them ghettos, oh, defund the police, defund this, defund. Well, they're talking about one thing where they're not talking about fixing another that would cause all these good chain reactions. And this is mainstream today. And unfortunately, it has penetrated the art world. And there are certain taboos that you cannot paint. Now, my paintings were about my reaction to terror. And it wasn't against Palestinians, it was against terror. And it showed actually, you know, how both of us are in the conflict and whatever. And those who understood it saw that there was no agenda. It wasn't coming out against anyone, but it upset me, this mainstream people who like to consider themselves progressive and evolved. My God, they're as bad as anyone else, if not worse.
Well, they're worse. No, well, I think it's pretty clear that people who label themselves progressive these days are not open-minded at all and will only allow anyone to speak who agrees with them. But in a place, in an artist's exhibit like that, especially in Warsaw, I mean, I don't think we can divorce ourselves from the fact that this happened in a country where, and this is part, I think, of the resentment that the Poles have, from what I understand, because there is a priest that I am in contact with who is in and out of Poland and has explained some of the nuances to me, that the Germans, most of the camps were in Poland. They weren't in Germany. So when people go on these trips to visit the concentration camps, they're actually going to Poland. And the Poles are resentful for that because they feel that it looks like it was Poland that did the Holocaust and that Germany has to some degree gotten off the hook. And there's also other resentments, the fact that Germany made its way back economically after the war while other countries are still suffering.
Hold on, just while you're saying that.
There's a lot of layers here.
So I addressed some of these things because I wanted to know. And again, you know, for going to Poland, it was rough for me. There's a thing I'd like to check. I don't know how much it is. I have to just find with people who really understand the Holocaust far better than I do. So a lot of the guards, they were saying, I said, yeah, well, what about your guards in the camps? And they said, find Polish guards. You'll see that they're Ukrainian. Right. And you know, first of all, I was discussing this issue with the museum director because I told him I have a problem with these things. And I said, and I have family also perished in the camps. And he looks at me and he says, so do I. And I went, what? He said, yeah, so do I. Now, I'm not forgiving.
Yeah, he was Jewish or not?
No, he was not Jewish.
So he was a Pole, right.
He's a Pole. So it's not that I'm forgiving any country, whatever, for the way they acted or the way they continue to act or whatever. But there were realities that I wasn't aware of. And it was, I'd like to say enlightening, but it was educating. And it allows me now to view things in a very different way. That being said, also with the Jewish presence in Europe, okay, which, you know, I was walking the other day. I mean, I also just got back, I guess, 2 days ago, and I'm walking the old city of Warsaw, which was recreated, which was flattened during World War II. And recreated based on paintings and drawings. And I'm looking at all these, the Polish society, you know, just nice people walking down. And I kept on thinking, I said, all of a sudden, the word "a stranger in a strange land" came up, just popped in my head. And I was, you know, saying, like, what the hell are these people, in a sense, doing here? It's like, all of a sudden I said, you know, visiting everything. And I said, why aren't people in Israel? Now, mind you, we have plenty of issues here. I'm not blaming anyone for not living here, but it was just very interesting. There's a lot more studying that I have to do. There's a lot more reading that I have to do. And I would like to go back to Warsaw and speak with these Jewish leaders and so on. I want to understand a little bit more from their side, obviously. I want to know why they did not address this issue.
Which issue? The one of the exhibit?
First of all, why didn't they come to the exhibit and address those bad images?
Well, maybe they will. The exhibit's going on for months.
For months. Well, hopefully they will. I think people should. Like I said, if something bothers you, go out to confront it. Do not write a little letter and stand behind, oh, I sent an email and all this. Don't just go outside. There were, mind you, there were some people, some Jews that did come to demonstrate against it, part of the Antifa, and they surrounded this guy, which I thought was fine. I wish I would have known, because I would have loved to surround him. But what about all these other things? Don't simply just focus on yourself, on this one issue. I mean, here's a museum that put on a show that really showing some bad things in the world, and this is what they focused on. And mind you, though, part of the controversy in Poland is because they're undergoing some, you know, I learned that the word nationalism is a 4-letter word. And God forbid you start getting nationalistic, you know, whoa. Now, I'm a hippie, I guess, inside. The song Imagine by John Lennon is like something I love, but
really
people say, yeah, no, I mean the words at least, you know. No, I believe I really want people to live together in peace and have all that. But what people don't understand is, you know, you always have a neighbor who doesn't want that. And then what do? It's like, especially we in Israel, we want peace more than anything, more than anything. And this is why we really go to serve and why we defend our country, because we want peace. But we have neighbors and people inside who don't agree with that. And so you have to then meet that line between that one core of peaceful, beautiful idea, we all live together, Shangri-La, and then the nasty people on the other side. Well, there's a border between that. And that's where that's where a stand simply has to be made. If you know, we look what's going on with Afghanistan, and it's so timely, you know, the people who want to live in peace and have their own free society, well, guess what? The Taliban and others over there don't want that. And so when you don't stand up to them, you lose. And a lot of people don't get that. Look, you know, I served in the IDF. I fought in Lebanon. I fought during the Intifada. You know, people don't realize in war, you really either win or lose. That's the way it is. It's very black and white, and lives are lost. So whatever, it was very an incredible trip. And there was something, remember I told you about, the righteous, what are they called? The righteous Gentiles?
Righteous Gentiles. In Yad Vashem here in Israel. So Israel has made tremendous efforts over the years to find the people who are not Jewish, at the risk of their own lives and sometimes at the cost of their lives, hid Jews during the war. It's an entire spectrum of people. It's some people who really did like a magnificent job. It's nuns in certain places and priests who hid children. Some people did it and were benefited from it in certain ways. But there really are a lot of people. Obviously, the most famous would be Oscar Schindler. The whole film was made about him. But it's controversial to some degree because, for example, he had workers in his factory that were Jews. So people say, well, he didn't really do it to save the Jews. He did it to get workers. You know, we can also do what's called in Hebrew, dan lekav zchut. We can try and give credit where credit is due and assume that the person did it for the right reasons. That Israel has made tremendous efforts, and there are many, many lists at Yad Vashem, at the major Holocaust Museum, of these people and their family. When they were alive in the earlier years, they were brought to Israel and they were honored. Now, if we find a name, we bring in their children or sometimes their grandchildren and honor them, because it's not something that should be taken for granted. And I think all of us should take a minute and think about that for ourselves. If we were in a situation where we could perhaps survive in a really bad situation or risk our lives to help somebody else, would we do that? All right. And it's really not easy. But from what you were telling me is that there are Poles in Poland who have not been recognized as righteous Gentiles. Would it be by the government? Who would recognize them?
So again, this is another topic that was, I mean, I always knew the topic of righteous Gentiles. I didn't know how far it goes. I have a friend who spends his time between Poland and Israel, Johnny Daniels, who's been working with restoring various, whether it be the cemeteries and working with the righteous Gentiles, just really helping out. And we met right before I left, and there are a number of these Poles who are living in complete poverty, who have either yet to be recognized, and the numbers are dwindling. I mean, these are people in their 80s and 90s, at this point, say 50, 100, some less, all different walks of life. And it upset me because also, you know, in the military here, we are raised and taught you don't leave anybody behind. And it's just the way we work. You don't leave anybody behind. And it was upsetting to me to see pictures of these people, the squalor that they're living in and so on, and saying, wait a second. I took it a little personal, maybe I take a lot of things too personal, but I said that really can't be. And I didn't know what I could do to help them. I mean, I have an idea. I said, I want to get together with a few of my other artist friends, if we can make small little portraits of them, maybe give them to them, at least something that we can do to
That's beautiful.
recognize them. I mean, like I just got back. I'm gonna see if I can figure it out. I mean, he's been organizing. These are older people, like getting them free transportation, and during COVID, it devastated everything. So he's been helping them out with various things and food and everything. Then that was beautiful. It was really beautiful. Again, it's just like, this was just another one of the topics that came out that I did not know about.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a very interesting stuff that I can not necessarily have to focus on, because obviously I'm still involved in the security world and still want to prevent terror, because I guess that's in my DNA. But this is something maybe I can make some of these people smile, which would be a nice thing personally for me to do.
Sounds like you have a lot to process about this trip.
Yeah. I have blank canvases already being set up. I'm going to be, I never really wanted to paint political art, but I guess some of these things are happening. And because I've also, again, like I mentioned, this whole progressive world, I guess controversy follows some people all the time.
Well,
but
how did they react to you? I mean, were there some people who said that you were a terrorist, or
no,
here you are,
So
a Jew from the Shomron?
Hold on,
Yeah.
Right next to me is an exhibition of Palestinian artists. Right next to me,
Of course.
and how they've been living under the resistance through existence and stuff. And first of all, when I read the thing, this was actually this was a thing in the works for a few years, where various artists had residencies here in, well, they like to say the West Bank and whatever. And I'm watching their films. And so this is right next to me. So the controversy, the conflict is right there. Of course, what I didn't bring up there, though I plan on it, is like they're saying, oh, the Palestinians have been occupied for over 70 years. Wait a second. Over 70 years? So we're not talking about Judea and Samaria. We're talking about Israel. So this whole show, in a sense, what they probably don't realize, because a lot of Europeans don't realize really what's going on here, right? And so this misinformation, that's right. That's what the Palestinians view, that the Jews are occupying all of Israel, that they're not even looking at our rights over here and something. And I plan to bring that up. I was sitting there, and I'm sitting with these Muslims involved in the show that I was in. We're watching the films, and they're saying, what kind of bullshit is that? The Muslims.
Really?
But and then we're not talking about,
because they know what's going on.
So
because they're Middle Easterners.
Absolutely. But these are other people saying, we're so sick and tired of the way they're acting. And now, of course, for them to come out and say that is, that's taboo also. Wow. But they're sitting there listening, and they're listening to the Arabic. And there was a perfect example of something that I really like. There's an old town of Lifta, which is as you come into Jerusalem, right?
On the left.
Beautiful. Yeah, it. Beautiful, beautiful area. And lately there's been efforts by I don't like using the word Palestinians because I don't think it's accurate. So I'm going to say Palestinian Arabs, saying, oh, we want to go back in. We were thrown out of there during the War of 48. The one thing they forget to mention is that there are Jews living there also. It was a Jewish Arab town, right?
It was a town that Ben Gurion said, please don't fight with us, and then we'll integrate you into Israel. And they chose to fight the Jews and try and prevent the establishment state of Israel.
Right.
And they paid the price for that.
Well, hold on. But it wasn't just them paying the price for it. It was the Jews also living there paying the price for it. Now, people don't know. That's what happens in war.
Right.
People say, oh,
everybody
war
loses.
crime or this, but everything this. And so war, guess what? People don't realize war is bad, real bad. And there's a lot of stuff that happens around it that is really bad. And there's no justification for humans to kill each other, in a sense, in my mind. I say that as someone who has fought in war. Okay. But again, we see this, what's going on, this manipulation, this, I don't want to keep on saying bullshit, but you can bleep it out, whatever. But
okay,
but
I think my audience can handle it at this point.
This malarkey. Well, you know the way I really speak, so I'm being nice.
Exactly.
This misinformation going on, and they're showing towns of this. Well, guess what? You know, it's like it's the way this whole thing is being presented, and also being presented to Europe, is wrong. And this is part of the problem. But you can't present the truth. You can't present the other side. If my paintings are showing terror, and I have a few really disturbing paintings in a sense where two figures holding each other, stabbing each other in the back, one holding one knife an Israeli flag, the other a Palestinian flag, because we are hurting each other, you know. And I'm just looking at it from an objective view. That the various, I did a thing on the red signs, which no one really knows about. You know, I call them the apartheid signs, but people say, yes, there's apartheid there.
You're talking about the red signs at the beginnings of Arab villages that warn Israelis not to go into these villages because they might be killed.
Hold it. It says warn Israelis. Let's call it what it is. Jews don't come in.
Because Israeli Arabs can go in. Yes.
Right. Well, they really can't by law, but Jews can't.
Right.
And whatever. So I put up these signs because I don't like it. There's separation. I'm one of these people against the wall. Okay, because I don't believe in, first of all, it's cutting land in half, which
You're talking about the wall that separates part of Judea and Samaria from Little Israel.
Again, is a bunch of hooey, if you will, because if people really understood the security situation, they would really be freaking out, you know. But these are things that are behind the scenes that I won't discuss necessarily on Zoom, but you know, in private conversations, I will talk about it. But they're being shown, and our government here has never shown, our PR is the worst. And these other evolved, progressive individuals out there fighting for human rights, ignoring really a lot of the things on the ground, ignoring the oppression and repression that the Palestinian leadership is doing against their own people. Needless to say, Hamas really up there, against their corruption and so on, against their violation of human rights and so on. No, but that we don't. Let's look at the Jewish thing always, where they were saying, oh, he's an anti-Semite or he's this, and this, rather than addressing a much bigger picture and being able to take care of that. And this show has just given me, you know, I guess I'm going to maybe use my paintbrush sometimes in a bit of a different way at this point, because it really upset me. And I'm watching this. I'm so upset at our government. God, I am so upset at them for years, because years they have just been not addressing this issue. And that, you know, it's very funny. I was told an interesting story, you know, like a mashal. I don't know how you say that. An anecdote.
Anecdote. Okay. Yeah.
Well, maybe.
It's not an anecdote.
So
but okay.
Not an anecdote, but so you have, let's say, 2 cans for charity, right? 2 pushkas, whatever, charity boxes. One you fill up to the top. The other you throw, you put, there's a few coins in. Now shake both of these charity boxes. Which makes the more noise?
The one that's half empty.
Exactly. And this is what people are hearing. And our government has been, and it has nothing to do with Bibi, Bennett, Barack, any one of them. They all have never addressed this situation.
The situation of
public relations, of the malarkey being spread by Palestinian leadership and so on, and whatever, all this BDS. You know, oh no, they don't take it seriously. Well, you know what? You better take it seriously. And when you're being attacked, you go out and you get them. And that's why you have all these supposed, I don't like using the word left wing or right wing, because It's, you know, a person has his rights to his individual thoughts. But all of a sudden, you're like lies and everything. Now, Israel's not the most just nation around. I freely say that. There's a lot of problems that we could have
Yes,
fixed.
we are.
We could have been better.
We're not
Fine,
perfect,
okay.
but we're better than
Okay,
everybody else. And I will
well,
continue to say that.
Fine. Okay. Well, what I
The
mean
bar
is
isn't
not,
high, but we're
hold
above
on.
it.
Well, we're definitely high. Oh, yeah. But and I'm just saying, I understand where they're coming from. I understand their narratives. But when we don't address the lies in a proper way, then other people, this misinformation grows. And we've created such an ignorance, allowed such an ignorance to grow, to fester, that something has to be done about it. And shows like this, it's like if I'm presenting terrorism, if you know, you can't barely even get shown like that in Israel, and I'm coming out against terrorism, so that's taboo. But if you can say make paintings and art or deal with things that go against Israel, that's okay, right? I can do things against white supremacists, that's okay. But can I do something against the attacks of Muslims against the Jews? No. That's Islamophobia, right? If can I say something about women who are being abused or something? Whoa, careful. Define who's doing it. Could I go against all these sexual things going on the Catholic Church or whatever? No, that. Oh, I'm sorry. That it depends. Sometimes you can do that. So there are a lot of these lines that artists are trying to express and get shut down. And this show was simply about that. And even if there were the things that I found disturbing, yeah, I know, freedom of expression. I don't know whether it's a philosophical discussion on its own, how much freedom someone should have. And I don't think
that's a big question.
It is a big question.
That is a very big question. If freedom of expression starts rolling into provocation or giving somebody the steam to want to do something.
So I'm against it provoking something, provoking against a specific people or religion. I'm really against that. I don't believe it. I don't think it leads to anywhere good. But talking about various issues like that, that's what this show was about. And it's just funny. Like I said, all our progressives, they're not talking about it. And I see it. I saw it a lot in America. I saw the distance between, people hating each other because either one chose to vote Democrat, one chose to vote Republican.
Yeah,
it's like
I'm going to agree with you on that. Just coming back from the States.
People don't realize this, just like in the States where you have these immigration issues going on the southern border and the northern border, and Canada border, and the Europeans are dealing with a mass wave of refugees also coming from Muslim countries.
Right.
So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the good side and the bad side. But that's you're not allowed to talk about the bad side. And it's the artistic community, creative community, whatever, is being shut down from having that dialogue also, because it's only through dialogue do we come to good solutions. And to feel shut up like that is a problem. I mean, it bothers me. I'm sorry, I got emotional, and emotion for me is also a 4-letter word. So
no, look, it's obvious that you stepped into like a cauldron here of a lot of different things, both on a personal level. Going to Poland as a Jew, I was in Poland. It's not an easy experience. It's a fascinating experience. It's a tremendous learning experience. Look, the cemetery, the Jewish cemetery in Warsaw, I don't know if you had a chance to get there, has 250,000 graves. So that's before the Holocaust. There was a teeming life for 1,000 years in Poland before the Holocaust. The Jews called it Polania, here lies God. I mean, they were sure that they had found the promised land. And Warsaw, if I'm not mistaken, on the eve of World War II, was 30% Jewish. I mean, it was really a great place to live. And literally overnight, the demons come out and life disappears. And the entire way of life, the shtetl way of life, Yiddish theater, all of it disappears and never comes back.
But
and
I have
never
to say
comes
something.
back. Yeah.
Like, again, I didn't know how my reaction would be. But when I went to the ghetto and I went to the museum there, and there was a brilliant statue, which is just, the image is just, I walked around like a king, like a king. You know, is that
Because
all these people, they fought, they suffered and everything. But I'm from Israel. I'm a Jew who has defended his people, who has fought for his people. I guess I continue to do. I'm surrounded by people who do. I'm not one of these people. It's like what was done to them was horrible. We survived. And that what I do, my peers do, what my country does, make sure that anywhere in the world, this is never, ever going to happen. Because you put us in a corner, and any country in the world, if stuff starts getting bad like that, we got a stinger in us that will reach anywhere and will hurt, and more than hurt. And I felt like a king because I knew that where I'm in this land, where my people were decimated and erased, that I'm here today to say that I come with my open hand and in peace and to move forward. But my existence today means that that's never going to happen anywhere, anywhere, anywhere in the world. Won't happen. And that's why I can walk around in a place that was the seat of our, like I said, of our people being destroyed. And that's right. You look at me walking tall because we got our people's back. And I felt strong. And even though people say, oh, pull out and all this controversy, no, I don't back down. I don't back down. My people don't back down. And I don't care who you throw against me, but you're going to see not what you grew up with history of people going through pogroming and everything. You're going to see someone else. And it empowered me to be there. And I did not expect it. I expected anger to take over. I felt totally different. And it's funny, I was invited to go to Berlin now by even a German, and I said, well, we'll see. Slowly. I mean, but it was just something, it was an empowering trip. And it's a shame that the world media and those progressive, evolved individuals, the people who claim to fight fascism, that they can't really do what they claim they are, and the hypocrisy that they show. So it's a new dawn.
Well, that's exactly, you mentioned before about how nationalism is a bad thing, right? We're all supposed to be the same. And I'm sorry, but I don't agree with you about John Lennon's song. I think that there is certain identity and that everybody should wear it proudly, respect other people's identity, but also have their own. I have absolutely no problem having my identity and being very fine with other people having it. But Israel is a problem because we are nationalistic, because you have an EU that feels that nationalism brought upon it 2 wars, and therefore nationalism is bad. And you should just have one currency and open borders. And it turns out that it's not working because people inherently do feel tribal or feel somehow distinct.
No, well, hold on.
So Israel's a problem for them.
Hold on, but why are they feeling that? Which is interesting. And I started discussing this, and I understand, and again, I understand the controversy over nationalism and so on. They started feeling that when they started feeling being taken advantage, buying this and so on. And what you have going on in Europe and in most Western cultures and societies, even America, is that other people coming in do not necessarily assimilate into that society, which is natural. At all. No, and we as Jewish people also, when we, after the diaspora and its self-preservation, form our own communities and so on. And this separation creates it. So I understand it. It's not that, again, that I'm for it. And yes, I said, like that hippie side of me, everyone should love each other and whatever. I do understand that nationalism, and we do have identities. We learned, look, in Migdal Bavel, in the Tower of Babel. Right?
Babel.
Whatever.
Tower of Babel, yes.
Tower of Babel, when people were, humanity is split into identities via language and so on. And we see this, and yes, people do have identities. But this is, again, what the progressive concept, and I hate using the word progressive because They're so
They're
not
not
progressive.
really progressive.
They're
Right.
really regressive.
Yes.
And that's bad. If people feel attached to others. Now, if a person wants to be a globalist and everyone in humanity, that's great. I really do think that. But if a person wants to have an identity also and wants to feel connected, you know what? That's great too. And it's the mutual respect that will bring about something quiet. We are here. We've been forced by the world to continue our nationalism. We were spread out. We went out. We were not accepted. And when you're not going to be accepted, that's what's going to happen. You know, and other people, they're feeling that they feel it a little bit different in Europe and so on. But that has to be respected too. There's nothing wrong with a person having his identity. Can it lead to conflict? Can it lead to clashes? Absolutely. But this is part of being human.
But anti-Semitism is another genre altogether.
Oh, yeah.
And you were at the heart of where it went. It wasn't just that somebody didn't like Jews, which is legitimate, but it went into genocide, and that was something else.
Exactly. It started, let's you know, where all, first of all, anti-Semitism, it didn't start in Germany.
No,
you know, it's been here a long, well, let's say anti-Judaism, anti-Jew. Let's start calling it it's anti-Jew, okay? Anti-Jew. That started a long time, way much longer ago. The culmination of this thing, that was ground zero, was in a sense in Poland. If we're talking about just in the modern history, yes, that little house painter and his screwed up ideas, you know, he brought it about. You know, Mein Kampf, Mein Kampf is still one of the best-selling books in Europe.
Where? In many languages. And that's the danger. And that's the danger.
Oh, by the way, so I was having this discussion yesterday, and he said, well, the translations make Hitler out to be some type of intellectual. They said, whereas if you read it in the original German, it shows him to be the madman that he was, which is interesting. So anti-Semitism is here. It's going to continue. That's the way it's going to be. And here, I'll just throw in a nice little interesting thing that I was having a discussion with a Palestinian Arab who does not live that far from me. And of course, you know, everyone comes down on Israel and all this stuff. And it was a discussion about anti-Semitism. And this guy had the guts to say, and he's right, he said, Palestinians should be leading the fight against anti-Semitism. So this Miles went, what's going on? And he said, absolutely. He said, here we're complaining that the Jews took our land. He said, and he's pro-Palestinian. He's not, you know, he's not sympathetic to us at all. He said, because of the anti-Semitism felt around the world, Jews felt they had no place to go but to return to their historical homeland. He said, we're guilty. We're guilty. And if we allow anti-Semitism to continue like this, more Jews are going to come back here, and we're going to lose more and more. Very interesting concept. Wow,
interesting concept. He's wrong, of course, historically. There were plenty of Jews who were trying to get back the land of Israel way before the Holocaust. but it's just interesting to see how he's framing it.
Interesting. Well, look, Dreyfus saw the Jew hatred and said, we're going to need our land. Thank God it wasn't Uganda, right? But that sparked a lot of things. Like, well, we have to go back to our land. He at least had the guts to say, yeah, where are you going to send them? They're not wanted in Europe. They're not wanted here. They're not wanted anywhere. Where do they have to go except back to their land, back to their history? It's interesting. I mean, I respected that he at least stood up and said that. He's probably, I haven't heard from him, so I wonder if they killed him already, but you know.
No, but that's actually not funny that you're saying that, because you can go to a controversial exhibit like this. You can have people be upset with you because you didn't pull out. You can have people be upset with you for a whole lot of reasons, but you're living in a free country, a free society, where you can come back and you can be on this podcast because I'm also free to say what I want to say. And that is a very big deal. And
Yeah.
some of the people that you met with there do not have that luxury, some of the women. No. And what you mentioned before
Eve,
about
their lives are threatened. They have bodyguards.
I understand. And that's what I'm saying. And what you were saying about the hypocrisy is tremendously true. Nobody, I mean, really, most of the world does not care about Muslims. Most of the world is going to give lip service now to the Afghani women who are going to be sold as sex slaves to the Taliban. They really don't care. The only time they care is when it happens with Israel and when it happens with the Jews. There's an obsession with the Jews that is unhealthy, is inexplicable. Many books have been written about it, and you saw it in the focus on there in the exhibit that you're on. But I think the important point here, the advantage that you have is you walked around Warsaw as a Jew with a country behind him. All right, with a strong country, as a brave Jew who could confront people because you're not trying to lay low and be weak, which unfortunately many Jews in the diaspora just want to lay low and hope that nobody notices them and don't attack them. And you and Israelis and my children and your children are cut from a different cloth. And that if there's ever a reason why we're not going back to the days of World War II, it's going to be that. And that's a very, very difficult concept for the world to accept and for many Jews to accept. Jews with power, Jews who can control their own destiny, is a fairly new idea. And that's very hard for a lot of people to accept, Israelis included, because we always feel bad. And if we have power, you have responsibility, and you can't do this and you can't do that. And so you kind of like, you brought up a lot of issues today, way beyond, what one podcast can do.
I've evolved. I've evolved. I'm no longer the counter-terror guy,
No, well, that's a very important thing too, because most people are not just one title, and you bridge two very different and interesting worlds. And I think, this exhibit that you were in, I wonder if it could be put on somewhere else. I wonder how many places in the world would be able to put on an exhibit like this. Like, I wonder if you could even have it in New York.
So they're actually going to look for it. I think they will make adjustments. I think there was a mistake with them taking these two idiots. I mean, I'm all for freedom of expression, but because of the provocation, I hope that they're pulled from the show and not anyone else. I think
to play devil's advocate, somebody could say that about you. How could you have a settler who, somebody could say that?
Hold it. I don't care.
It out there.
I don't care who they are.
Mm-hmm.
If he's an anti-Semite, I don't have a problem with him being an anti-Semite. I had a problem with some of the images were, I think, too provocative.
Could inspire people to violence. Maybe. Because that's the problem.
So the image,
to get people to think is one thing. To get people to act in a horrible way is something else entirely.
So I mean, that's what really has to be discussed. That was the philosophical question involved in this exhibition. Right. Again, because this guy, one of this guys there, that Danny, whether he's a Holocaust denier, I think he is. It's not necessarily he doesn't deny it. His way that he presents it, though I understand it now. I mean, he did some really bad stuff, and well,
he has a bad background. I mean, he's been arrested for anti-Semitic acts. It's not just what he puts on canvas.
So what he did, he didn't view it necessarily as anti-Semitic, though I think I should be the judge of that. And I mean, one of the judges at least, and I did. And that's why I wouldn't include him in this show. This show can be very important worldwide, but it does have to, there are some things that you simply, and some people you simply don't put in. And because the issues that were discussed regarding human rights and those things, this has to be shown.
They got shunted aside.
Well, they got thrown to the side. I addressed terror. There was a North Korean. There was a Chinese artist. Right. There's a guy who fought against tyranny in Belarus, who's sitting in jail now. And so
amazing.
These are the things that were discussed. But to pick on these two little idiots, that were the controversy. And one of them, like I said, I spoke to him. Maybe I changed his mind. At least he did change about certain things.
Okay. All right.
So we'll see.
So for assuming that most of my listeners are not going to make it to Warsaw in the next couple of months, is there any way to view this exhibit online? Is there any other information that people can find out about it?
That's up to the museum. I mean, they can see some of the works that I put out.
So what would people look up?
So
I'll put it in the text of this podcast as well.
They could go to, my website is marcproart.com, MarcProart.com. Facebook, I can be found on my artistic stuff. I put it on, you can see it under my last name in a sense, but when I spell with a V, the W is for the other side of me.
For the Polish side, yes.
Yeah. I mean, there was one reporter, and she really upset me. You know, I thought her brain was beyond, and she was for AP, and so that her article went all over the place.
She writes for AP, and you were giving her some credit for honest reporting. Wow,
right, I didn't. I'm naive.
Didn't think you were that naive.
Her reporting was honest, but again, it just focused just on that. You want to hear something funny? A neo-Nazi website went on and quoted me. Now, of course, they were blaming the Jews. Oh, I don't know. I'm not necessarily proud that they quoted me, but I am proud how they quoted me. Because they were saying, oh, meddlesome Jews are going against, like, it's the Jewish, again, the simple fact that it was not the Jewish demonstration which was focusing on, it was the Antifa, although the progressive and regressive and whatever that were, but they said, oh, it's the Jews doing it, right? But then they saw where I said, come out and do something and confront and everything. And they said, well, this is a good Jewish attitude. Maybe if more Jews had his attitude, there'd be less Jew hatred in the world, which was interesting.
Very,
very interesting. So, I mean, I'm not allowed to say what I think should be the treatment of these people of this paper. I don't know whether I'm allowed to say it. I don't wish them good health. But it was, again, that was interesting to see. And I think that is an important lesson, though, that when Jews feel confronted, go out, think, see a picture, but go out. Not a Facebook post. If your town is being plagued by people demonstrating against Israel and coming out and walking through your town to terrorize you and to provoke you, don't write a letter to the New York Times, oh, those bad people, they came in here, it's so bad, and go out. I'm not saying violence, but go out and confront. Make a dialogue. Maybe you can make a change, because change doesn't come from sitting in your chair and writing and posting something. It comes from no.
Unfortunately, a lot of the atmospheres in different places are very intimidating. And in areas, let's say college campuses, where Jewish kids do want to come out and have the dialogue, they are simply physically afraid to do so. And that, I think, is a very sad statement on our society, where you can't even feel free to have that dialogue. And I think perhaps that is the most frightening thing of all that we're going into right now. Look, anti-Semitism is usually the window into a whole lot of other hatred. And it's not, when it's not stopped, because most people aren't Jewish, then they find themselves dealing with a lot of other hatreds that are out of control. I think we're ready at that point in this world. And I would hope that we have some leadership to try and stop it.
The point you just said about college campuses, if they come out and face the protesters, even though they're coming out against Israel, and if they even bring up the issue, college campuses, right, always been a den of whatever supposed progressive thought and so on. Yet on these campuses, you know, demonstrating against Israel and having these, that's fine. I don't see any demonstrations going against the Taliban, against the variations of Sharia war against women. I don't see that going on.
Yeah,
this should be an eye-opener, but no one's talking about it, because in this mainstream, and even though they like to consider themselves the underdog, this whole woke, progressive, cancel culture and everything, this is mainstream.
Look, the Western world doesn't want to face the fact that, to some degree, there's a totalitarian element that's running the dialogue, and that that is very frightening and something that I hope doesn't reach Israel, where we can still have these conversations. And it's so important to be able to do so. Did you freeze? Looks like we were frozen here. Okay. So we have, nope, I'm still moving, but we have covered a lot of topics here, a lot of food for thought, and really, you know, spoken to Marc Provisor, who was right in the thick of it, not because of his security issues, but because actually of his artistic abilities that threw him into a different kind of an arena. And so I want to thank him for joining us and for raising some of these issues from a completely different perspective, really a lot of different topics here. Just, you know, going to Poland at all is a difficult experience, and going to Poland and then to Warsaw and then really being hit by so much of these other issues at the same time, sounds like, as I said before, is going to take a while to process. So we are done for today. Thank you for listening. Rejuvenation, this is Eve Harow on the Land of Israel Network. And I will, to the best of my abilities, keep saying whatever I can and bringing guests on who are forcing us to think about things that many of us don't want to think about. Again, where do we stand when it comes to certain issues? Where do we stand on calling out things and places and newspapers and whoever in the world who are not telling the truth, or who are focusing only on one side of the story? And as you all know, I'm crazy when it comes to context. And that is so often what we don't have. So thank you everyone so much for joining us today. And thank you for Marc Provisor for giving us really a glimpse into a world that most of us would never have access to. The world of the artists who are still trying to keep that dialogue going. And even though it most certainly isn't easy for any of them. Okay. Are you there, Marc? I just want to say goodbye, but your audio's off. Can't hear you.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Apparently what happened is my data package happened to end then.
Okay. I carried it. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, really. And I know you're gonna be unpacking this for a long time. And
oh yeah.
Yeah, I see that. And if anybody wants to be in touch with you, they can be in touch with me, and I'll give them your email address if they have any thoughts about this. Okay.
And they should check out my website, check out my art. I mean, you know, I will be going back and forth from the States, COVID permitting, now and then. There are some people that are actually want to also hear about some of these experiences, especially, and perhaps exhibit some of your work and wherever they are. And and that could be fascinating, because it's also about art and terror and things. But definitely, it is another side. It is not just the security side of me, and I would be grateful if they would look.
Okay.
And having a painting from an Israeli artist from Judea and Samaria on your wall,
that itself makes quite a statement. Okay.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Thank you, Eve.
My pleasure. Take care, everyone. Hope wherever you are well. I already got my COVID test back from the airport yesterday that says that I don't have it. So managed to spend 2 weeks in the States, and thankfully, thanks to the Israeli government for providing the third shot, because really it's because of that third booster that I think I was able to be healthy, and that's no small thing. So wherever you are, I hope that you're protected and that we can get back to whatever normal was, whatever what normal is anymore. And that your summer was wonderful, moving into September and moving into school years, and I will still be here. So Eve Harow, thanks to Ben again, and Tabitha, Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.